February of 2009.
Uh-huh.
I had gotten us tickets to go see WrestleMania. Triple H had given us tickets, and John brought his son, who was just a little boy at the time.
Yep.
And we went out there, and we had a really good time. And we went. They have like an expo there. I forget what they call it, but it's like an expo. It's like the expo at the Arnold. And
Right.
they had a graveyard, the Undertaker's graveyard set up there.
Right.
And we couldn't believe our eyes, but we actually found a tombstone that was prophesized this day. And here it is. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Rips and Rants. I'm Dave Palumbo, joined by John Romano, and we have a very special show for you today. This was 14 years in the making, this show, John, and our prophecy finally came to fruition. Muscular Development is no more. Officially, no more.
Official Muscular Development is officially no more.
Hold on, I got to pull up this. John and I, when we left Muscular Development, we were fired in February of 2009.
Uh-huh.
I had gotten us tickets to go see WrestleMania. Triple H had given us tickets, and John brought his son, who was just a little boy at the time.
Yep.
And we went out there, and we had a really good time. And we went. They have like an expo there. I forget what they call it, but it's like an expo. It's like the expo at the Arnold. And
Right.
they had a graveyard, the Undertaker's graveyard set up there.
Right.
And we couldn't believe our eyes, but we actually found a tombstone that was prophesized this day. And here it is. We even took a picture with it.
Yeah.
Muscular Development, rest in peace, February 2nd, 2009. So that was like the day we left, and that was their death date. But
now
I guess it's been held on, for 14 years, So
it reminds me of what was that? What was it? Karen Ann Quinlan in the coma? Remember?
Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible.
An agonizing 14-year death.
Yeah.
But no greater testament to the acumen the Blechman brothers have for running perfectly good companies into the ground.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, you probably know the history better than I do. What year did the Blechman family go and buy the name Muscular Development from the Pearly Raiders family?
Yeah. No, that was Hoffman. Wasn't Raider? Raider was an Iron Man.
Oh, it was the Hoffmans. Oh,
right.
Where did they have to go? Like
York
York Barbell. Right. Okay, York. Which is funny because that's where I went to college, right there. So
that had to be 92, 93, probably 92. I would probably 91 or 92 actually.
All right. So they bought the magazine. They had a 10-year run on that thing that was pretty good, and then I came on board. Well, I was writing for them from 2000 because they had gone natural for a while. Blechman had gone natural with the magazine for a while. I don't know what the reason was behind that, but And then
Well,
he's like,
I mean, you know, we should talk about these little
oh,
nuances.
all right,
Because they're kind of interesting.
explain the history of what went on. You know,
Well, at the time, you know, it was a tremendous battle with Weider. You know, they were always elbowing us out of the opera house, as it were.
So how did you get a job with Steve to begin with the magazine?
Oh man, that's a whole other topic. What I had been out of prison for like 3 days, and I had a halfway house on, you know, free man for like 3 days, and my phone rang, and it's this very unmistakable Long Island accent, you know, leaving me a message on a thing kids called the answering machine, and it had this thing in it called a tape, and it recorded the guy calling you. They could leave a message. That's where that whole thing, like, leave your message after the beep came.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Boop.
history lesson.
Yeah.
So and he want, and so like I had been before I went to prison. I had done the Lou Zwick show, American Muscle. I was doing cooking segments.
Oh, that was before. I forgot that timeline. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was interrupted there for a little bit, you know, and it's you know, you want to talk about agonizing days in prison is when a whole group of the inmates are in the TV room and they got ESPN on, and I'm dreading if it ever came on to one of those episodes.
Oh, you with the chef's hat? Yeah.
Oh my God, I was just like, just cringe, like, don't do it.
Don't show me the chef's hat, please.
So I lucked out. I mean, it never happened. But irrespective of that, Blechman was wanted to have a cooking recipe, you know, a cooking segment in the magazine, an article, and because he had seen me doing them for Zwick, and Blechman was supporting one of Zwick's deals, and I don't know, I think Supro was involved or whatever. But so it ended up, and I you know, wrote an article. And I still remember it because I wrote. I didn't have just got out of prison. I didn't even have a typewriter. I wrote it by hand on a yellow pad.
Oh my God!
and you know, Blechman said when I, you know, contacted him, you know, I was just, you know, happy that I was getting, you know, some ink in a magazine, because back then, you know, magazines were prestigious. It's not like today where they're worthless, but back then, having a byline in a magazine was pretty, regardless of what you were saying, it was a pretty big deal, you know. Sure. So I was happy with that. And then he said, "Well, we haven't talked about compensation." And I said, "Are you going to pay me?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll give you, you know, $300 an article." So I handed the first one in, and I got the handwritten one. And the secretary, I forgot, it wasn't any of the ones you knew, called me, because they were working with Twin Lab. Called me and said, "You know, Steve said he loved the article, but if you type it next time, he'll pay you $500." Yeah. So and he did fund that book completely. He, you know, Advanced Research Press put that book together. You know, Roy Ulan produced it. It had, you know, he went out and got you know, endorsements from like Lee Labrada and, you know, important people. So
the funny thing is, it was all natural muscular development. It said at the top. You probably were the only one not natural in the whole
a great all natural physique right there, right? So I was still in my learning infancy. You got to remember, that was a long freaking time ago. You know. So anyway, and then I was just doing that for a while. I had I was with Shelly Beatty at the time. Right. Who, you know, was getting ready had just taken third in the Olympia. We got a contract together for Twin Lab, to rep Twin Lab supplements. And then as fate that went on for a while. We did a lot of traveling, a lot of appearances. I wrote more articles. And then, as fate would have it, our beloved Don Ross passed away. Right. And left a big void in the magazine, because he was doing Muscle Beach Beat and features and, you know, interviews, and you know, his contribution to the magazine was tremendous, and it was a big void left there, and that I just kind of conveniently flowed into.
Gotcha.
And then, you know, shortly thereafter, I became senior editor, and that was 18-year run.
John, check this out.
So, you know, for that, no, it was the lat. It was the lat.
No, not Blechman. I'm talking about Don Ross.
Oh, John.
Those veins. That's freaky, right?
Both torn biceps who were like golf balls on the top.
Yeah, man, huge veins going down like torn biceps.
You know what? We lost. Guys today don't know what a character.
He was great. He was great.
What a character we lost when Don died. He had this thing, you know, because he was a wrestler. So he was, you know, the bodybuilders all training their necks. And he was like obsessed with training his neck. Big freaking neck. And
he saw me training neck at Gold's in Venice. He loved it. Yeah,
but he had this machine on a plank. Did you ever see that? It was like this. It was like a spring-loaded wheel that had a neck harness on with a cable, and it was on a plank. And you had to stand on the plank, and you hook this thing into your chin, and you go like this, you know, and the wheel goes.
You know why he did that, John? I don't. Do you know why he trained his neck so much?
But wait a minute.
Why?
Why?
Because he hated pencil necks. Right? That was his favorite.
But wait.
Look at that pencil neck standing over there by the phone. He doesn't train his neck.
No, I know. And to that end, he took his home plank to the gym. It's home. You can use it in front of the TV. Why are you bringing it to Gold's Gym and like dragging it?
He was there all day. That's why he never left the gym.
Because it was
go eat and come back. You know.
Oh man,
he would have been great for the after hours show for sure. He would have been.
Oh, the Wally George show was his.
I remember those? Wally George. He was on that all the time. But I'm saying he would have been great for after hours. He would have been a definite whack packer for sure.
Total. He would have been the king of them. He would have taken over.
Mr. G and him would have been like best friends for sure.
Yeah. Oh, they would have bunked together.
Anyway, all right. So you take over. What year is this now?
This is probably 93 or 4. Probably.
Yeah, this is early still. This is early.
Yeah, this is probably back then, and so and then you know it just kept growing and growing and growing from there.
Why did they switch to all natural again? Tell people because they were they had no more bodybuilders. They just went natural athletes like Kai Green, and they had Skip LaCour and all those guys in there for a while.
Kai Green was our first because he was actually technically a natural dude.
Yeah, back then he probably was too.
Yeah. So what happened was Weider was just too much of a stumbling block. Blechman was terrible at diplomacy. He could have sat down with Joe and said, you know, Joe, you know, I really, you know, admire you. And you know, I mean, remember, they're both Jews. They would have gotten, you know, I don't mean that in any derogatory sense. It's only in the sense that it's unifying to them. It's like, oh, they always support each other.
I think it was a combative thing, like who could be the best, you know.
Blechman made it that way, but Weider was clearly the apex predator in the group. So he wasn't going to like worry about Blechman doing anything. And he dismissed Blechman all the time, every time he had anything to do with him.
Right.
So you know, but if Blechman was a better diplomat, he could have forged a bond, a relationship there, like Paul Dillette did with Mannion, you know.
Right.
So, but you know, he didn't do that. So, Blechman's problem in his whole entire probably life, as well as I knew him, was his ego. And you know what? You know what proof of that is, fellas? Here's a great lesson for you in business. You notice nobody is talking about who's buying MD right now. Is there anybody claiming that they're bought MD, that they're buying MD, that they're launching MD under their auspice? Is anybody doing that? Anybody?
Nope.
No. Bueller? Anybody? No. It's worthless. So that's why it's not being sold. It's not worth anything. You only close the doors of a business when it's worthless. Okay, so you had a company, a magazine at the time that David Pecker was willing to buy, okay, to now, several years later, shuttering the doors because the company's worthless. Right. So
No, it makes sense. I mean, I was trying to pull up a picture, but I can't find it.
Well, but the basis of those bad decisions, the bad decision was ego based, in that instead of retiring worthless right now, or near worthless, Blechman would have been the undisputed world heavyweight champion, king of all bodybuilding media, if he had left you and me alone to lead the web brigade, as we were doing uber successfully over there at MD online.
Yeah.
So whatever, all of what RXMuscle became would have been on top of what we had already put, the foundation we had already laid with MD Online.
Let's go back just historically for a second. So you take over mid 90s into the late 90s. Then the Blechman family, who owned Twin Lab, obviously, and was advertising their products in Muscular Development, which is why they bought the magazine to begin with. They switched to an all-natural format for whatever reason.
I forgot to finish.
Marketability wise, whatever the case may be.
Let me just finish answering that. So Weeder was always blocking us out of photo shoots, blocking us out of it was always because Blechman couldn't, make a detente with him. Yeah. So to find a point of difference, it became, the hypocrisy started boiling up to the surface, that all of the guys, in Weeder's ads, who are promoting the uber effectiveness of his protein powder and, weight gainer and whatever else, champion, whatever other line in his, victory line was given these guys, was all bullshit, because they were all jacked up on juice. So, so in order to combat, he wanted to have a war. So the war was based on the hypocrisy that Weeder's athletes are steroid users, yet they're being promoted as the beneficiaries of the victory line of Weeder's supplements. So that was what the battle cry was, that we're going to be focused on all natural guys, because those guys take Twin Lab supplements, and they actually do have bodies that are built by hard work and supplementation and a good diet, and not steroids. Yeah. And that's where we got,
which was a good business model to sell Twin Lab products, not such a good business model to sell magazines.
Right. It's so funny. In every iteration of the title, no one ever sought to shorten it. It was always the longest, most cumbersome, most difficult to say title. In even Kentucky Fried Chicken went to KFC. You know what I mean? And instead he added to it all natural muscular development, unofficial muscular development. It's like, what magazine title is a sentence?
I don't think that Mr. G can say all natural muscular development with his teeth, right? He can never get all that out.
He never got that all.
So anyway, so I really met Steve for the first time. I think it was 1999, going into 2000, at like one of Steve Weinberger's shows in Manhattan at the Manhattan College. He comes up to me, and I don't think I've ever said two words to the guy, and he said, "What's up?" Because I was big and freaky at that point, and he loved all that freakiness. And he's like, "Yeah, we gotta get you. We gotta do a column in muscular development. When you want to do a column," I said, "You're all natural. What am I gonna write about?" He's like, no. He goes, "I'm taking over the magazine. We're going hardcore." I said, "All right." I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And so he came up with the idea of the anabolic freak. That was my column, and I wrote that, I think, from 2000. All the way till the end, I was writing that column. So till 2009. So for 9 years I did that column. But he had that.
Wait, stop. Nuance a moment. Okay. Remember, your salary was being paid for with blood money, because the renaissance of the magazine was at the hands of numerous pages of scantily clad bikini girls pouring out of their bikinis.
He went crazy, because he said we got to do. He went from all natural to drugs and naked women, right?
Sex sells, and he wanted to come up with a magazine called Malice, which was like his version of Maxim. I
was going to say he must have copied Maxim, because
it was a direct copy of Maxim. It was going to be guns, girls, knives, all the stuff he wasn't allowed to play with.
So he comes out. Yeah, right. The magazine was mostly like pictures of just. And who was shooting all those pictures for the magazine?
He was getting them from some source.
Wasn't it like Jason? Not Jason Ellis,
no,
was it?
No. He had a guy, Michael Scott, somebody Scott.
Oh yeah, one of these guys, with these fake names. Yeah, he was doing this. The pictures were good, but they were like pictures.
But it was hundreds. I'm serious. Hundreds. Go back to that era and pick up a MD. It was this thick. It was 490 pages, and 300 of it was ads. 150 of it was girls in bikinis, and 6 pages were articles.
It was like Playboy magazine for like bodybuilders. Basically.
Man, fold outs. We had centerfolds. Remember?
And look, it worked. It was selling. He put it back. He put himself back on the map with the magazine.
It was funny. Of all the places he claimed to be #1, Barnes and Noble, and he never credited the truck stops, which were
really
the truckers were buying those magazines like hotcakes with all those. I'm telling you.
All the Jimmy the Bulls who were driving all day, right? Before they had porn on cell phones. Yeah, there was no cell phones back then.
No, there were no cell phones.
Or they were very.
That's a whole other Blechman era we got to talk about one day. His war with the cell phone.
So I start writing for him, and John's doing his columns, his outrageous columns. You're writing like four columns a month, right?
Well, the features and columns, yeah. Well, what it was there was a divide in the hierarchy. I was senior editor of the magazine. You were senior editor of.
Well, I hadn't been made. We hadn't done the website.
You hadn't done that yet.
I haven't got to that. So this is from 2000 to like 2005.
Okay.
Then I go to jail in 2005 for what was it, 5 months. And you do the article on me before I go in, and the article when I come out. And then, which is this is like typical Blechman, like what happened to you. As soon as I get out, Blechman contacts me. He's like, because he figures now I'm done competing, because I had said I'm not going to compete anymore. He's like, I got an opportunity for you. So I go and meet him at whatever steakhouse. What is that? Pace's Steakhouse. One of those steakhouses.
Pace. Awesome steakhouse.
Takes us out to a great steak dinner. And
always.
He says, here's my idea. I want to start up because he had no web presence. It was like a 1-page website, and I had been doing my website, DavePalumbo.com. I had started. And, Colette, who I was dating at the time, she was into websites, and she talked me into doing a website. I really didn't want to do it. And she kind of taught me how to do it a little bit. And she was doing my website. And I was just going to all the shows and just taking pictures and putting them on there. It was like the first Instagram, really. Right. And I was noticing that there would be judges and all the people at the shows would be going, look, lobby computers in the hotels, looking at all the pictures I'm putting up, because I'm the only one going to all the shows putting pictures up. No one, there was no cell phones. Like we were taking them with real cameras and we were uploading them, to the website. Right. And because no one had their own website at the time. So Blechman realized, wow, that's a good business model. Maybe he can do it for us. So he made me a very, very generous offer to work from full time, be the editor-in-chief, and build out the website. Essentially, come up with a concept and let's start doing the website. And at the time, Dan Solomon was going back to Dan Solomon. Dan Solomon and Bob Chickarell were doing one of the first bodybuilding radio shows. Yep. I think Carl Lenore technically had the first one, but they did the first one where they really talked bodybuilding only.
It was all Bob and Dan were all bodybuilding.
Yeah, Pro Bodybuilding Weekly.
Pro Bodybuilding Weekly. Yeah.
And I don't know if it was Dan or Bob. One of them got probably Dan got bodybuilding.com to sponsor it, who was our main competition when we first launched.
Right.
Bodybuilding.com was doing the most bodybuilding content.
They were huge. They were a giant at the time.
Yeah. Because they were selling tons of product on their website. They were like the Amazon.com of the day.
Right.
So they had a lot of funding. And so Bob and Dan were doing a weekly show on there. So Blechman, gets me to build out the website with Mike Salazar, who was our webmaster at the time. And John and I started doing, and actually it was Greg at first with us, but he became too disruptive, but it was No Bull Radio. So we started that in 2006. And you couldn't do it on you couldn't, people don't realize there was no audio, there was no video, it was all audio. And no one had the ability to do it on their own. It wasn't.
We had to call in. We had to call in to Voice America.
We had each show cost Blechman $200, so it was $200 a week just to do a 1 hour radio show, and they had specific time. If you missed time, you had to do it on time. It was live, and it was the quality was terrible. But we did it. No one else had it, and we had that show for whatever it was, 3 years. Became obviously the Dan's show and our show was the most popular show because that was the only place you can get information on bodybuilding pretty much up to the second.
Up to the minute, yeah.
And we built out the website, and then Blechman decided to make a big splash about the fact that we launched musculardevelopment.com. We agreed to have a booth at the Arnold Classic, if you remember. I think that was that the first year? Was that 06? February 06? Or was that like 07? Might have been 07.
With the big stage.
I think that was 07, yeah. So
it was 07.
We built out Blechman. It was like throwing like a wedding for Donald Trump. It was so stressful, this whole thing, putting the whole thing together. And all the acts, we had the Smalley brothers, and we had all these girls, and we had
all the events we came up with, the prizes.
It was like a rock concert at the Arnold. We were loud. We had loudspeakers. I mean, the stage, I think it cost him over $100,000 to build the stage they had there. I mean,
it was a huge platform.
Yeah, stage. He went all out. He did go all out on it. I mean, and we did it actually 2 years in a row, if you remember.
2 years. Well, we did it at the Olympia, too.
I don't think we did it at Olympia.
Yeah, because that's where.
I think we did it at the Arnold 2 years in a row. We might have had a smaller stage at the Olympia, but I don't think we had a stage at the. I don't remember. I thought it was the Arnold Classic because we definitely 3 days.
You know what? Another thing that no one gives the Smalley brothers credit for is that booth, that stage was manned every second that expo was open. Georgie and Bobby never shut up, not for 1 second. It was like 9 hours straight of entertainment, right? And they never it was not quiet for 1 minute.
And they're the ones who I got to give credit. They're the ones who actually in the booth next to us was BSN, and Triple H was appearing at that booth,
right?
And they called him over. I didn't know him at the time. I never even said 2 words to him, basically. And they embarrassingly called him over, and he came over. And he came up on the stage, and we were interviewing him, and that's how I actually hooked up with him, believe it or not. So he contacted me after
Triple H came from them. That's right.
Yeah, they broke the ice because they had no shame whatsoever. They would invite anyone.
Anyway, and to the energy that they had. You guys watch a rock concert. It's like maybe 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half. A band goes. These guys were performing 9 hours straight or
push-up
more.
Contests, and we had girls at the booth.
Yep. And then afterwards, we'd go to we would be in the hotel lobby. They were still going. Bobby with no shoes.
And then the after party.
Everywhere. They were constantly going.
I was so exhausted that weekend because we would be at the booth all day, and then you and I would run to the show to see the prejudging during the afternoon, the night show at night, and then after the night show, we would go to the after party and film there. It was like there was like 2 hours of sleep every night. It was,
and then after that, we'd go back and start tagging shit, watermarking it, putting it up,
editing shit. Right? Yeah,
we never slept. Sleep was not on the agenda on those days.
I remember, Steve's wife Elise is, she's kind of reserved, type of person.
You know what? There is nothing bad to say about
I was going to say she's on a regular basis. She's kind of a very reserved person, and she was like, holy
cool
shit,
lady.
That was like a rock concert. She was she was like so animated after the whole thing was over. I was like, wow, that was a pretty good response from Elise, because I never heard that.
And she was definitely more on the very side, but great woman. There is nothing bad.
She was always very nice. She was always very nice to me.
She was very sweet, very nice lady.
Yeah, I mean the whole family was nice, in a sense.
Yeah, they were for the most part.
Until they thought we were trying to steal the company. So what happened is John and I had this crazy, crazy great success. Then I start my own nutrition company, which is independent of the Muscular Development. And then Blechman wants to get back into supplements. And then he had asked me, hey, why don't we go partners on this thing after I had launched it? And I said, and I thought about it for a very long time because I really I respected Steve a lot. He was like a mentor to me. I mean, we would talk nutrition articles and studies, and I really, really admired him a lot, even though we goofed around with him too. But you know, it was all in good. It was all in good fun. It was never anything malicious.
Yeah, but he had a shitty way of handling his business, though.
Yes, the one thing that we did just argue about a lot was that I'm a kind of person that if I owe someone money, I pay him, and so checks would sit on Steve's desk like for months unsigned, and he had the money. I'm like, Steve, just pay these guys already, because then they call me, and everyone wants to know where the money is. You know, like all the top bodybuilders.
And the desk. Wait, the desk. Another nuance moment. The desk was like when you're watching the news and after the tornado went through the house and they show you like what the house, the table in the dining room with all the rubble on it, that was Blechman's office.
Well, because he had checks stacked up on one side, research articles all over the place because he was always reading research articles. And he had his like little laptop that had 800 browser windows open, and the computer was crawlingly slow because he never rebooted and he never shut all the browser windows. So he never understood why the thing didn't work.
Right. Oh no! He never understood why your article wasn't up or the pictures weren't up, because he just thought they would magically appear. The reason why he couldn't access anything on the computer was because his computer was bogged down. That was compound the issue.
So I mean, aside from that, though, we got along really well. So everything was going really good. And then I started the church. I said to myself, you know what? I probably should have talked to you about it, but you would have given me the same advice. I said, if I bring him on, we're gonna kill each other eventually, because it'll ruin our friendship. I said, because then now it's business, and he doesn't do business like I do, and I'm gonna be like, I don't want to be associated with him not paying people on time and stuff like that. So I said, you know what, Steve? I think it's gonna ruin our friendship and our work relationship if we do this. Let's just keep this separate. And of course, there was no right answer to that, because I know he was hurt that I didn't want to do it with him, and it had nothing to. I just didn't want to jeopardize MD, to be honest with you, because I had no intention of leaving ever. You know, I would have worked.
Now, but you got another nuance moment. I'm glad I could fill these gaps in for you. Okay. The carb wars was raging.
But that's what led to the carb wars. I had to tell this part. So he was a little hurt over this whole thing. So he started to then post articles that were contradictory to like a lot of what a lot of the information I give out, which was about ketogenic diets, about lower carbohydrates. And the funny thing was, he was all on board with that before this. Now, all of a sudden, he took this opposite approach. And all of a sudden, he went from being anti-carb, because he never ate carbs. Yes, I did. I had beans. But he never really ate carbs. He only ate beans. He ate high protein, high fat, good fats. He was a really, he's got me onto the whole
Mediterranean diet.
Yeah, guy. Mediterranean diet. And so all of a sudden, he turned into this carbaholic, like everything was carbs. And so he's posting this stuff on the forum. So we were combating him and arguing with him on there, thinking that it was, at first, I thought it was almost like a joke, like maybe he's just trying to stir up some controversy. But everyone on the forums, and the forums at the time were like Facebook or Instagram now, everyone would just put their opinions up there, and everyone was backing us, and he was going crazy. And the thing was, he couldn't post himself. He would write it out on a yellow pad, and then he would give it to a secretary who would have to edit it and then retype it into the form and then post it. So it would take him like
nuance moment. Okay. It wasn't like I'm grabbing the pen, I'm scratching on a note here. It was 3 days of agony over the post. Did you see that? And 7 different versions of it, scratched out, rewritten on the side, notes in the column, and then Kara, print this out.
And then we would respond in like 3 seconds.
There is his use of paper is unprecedented. Okay, there is a swath of the rainforest visible from the moon. Okay, that is completely be attributed to his use of paper. Okay, piles with paths, through it, on the floor, on the
that goes back to the magazine. That's the magazine days. Yeah.
Right. Just paper. Everything.
Remember that printer he had? He had a printer that would print out these enormous pages that would look like the layout of a magazine. So they were like huge pages, and with the center thing, and so each was like half a page of half a magazine. I mean, these pages and the color ink that must have been required to print those magazines. It was like a mock magazine. That had to cost a fortune, that machine.
Well, that was the only way, because, God forbid we do anything on a computer. But what we did, we laid out the whole magazine on the wall,
right?
So the cover and all the features and where the gatefolds are, and you got to play, put the ads, and so it was, well, probably the program didn't exist at the time.
No, but he continued to do the paper even longer than he needed to do.
Yes, it was, and it was only that way, paper.
So getting back to the story, so then we have these constant back and forth arguments, and he was getting destroyed on the forums by all the people who were backing John and I's opinion, because he was just being combative, is really what he was being. I don't think he really even believed what he was posting, but he was just find articles anywhere and post them. And so he got to the point where he was so frustrated and so angry that they had to, like, the people in the office had to tell him, Steve, you're banned we're not allowing you to post on the forums anymore, because he couldn't do any work. That's all he would do all day long.
Well, remember what I posted that drove him nuts? I said, who this was one of, there were a couple of straws that broke the camel's back, and this is one of them. When I said, who are you going to believe? A 280-pound shredded bodybuilder who's gotten 200 people in shape for contests in the last year, or a scrawny little scientist waving a study?
I forgot you wrote that. Oh my God! Yeah, that might have been the one of the.
Oh, that was unquestionably straw that broke the camel's back. That was a fucking log that broke the camel's back. That one.
Now, in addition to that, all the people in the office who worked there, and a lot of them were very nice, but I think they were a little jealous because John and I were making more money than they were, and they were working. They had to be in an office, and we were out gallivanting around the universe, having fun and bringing all the celebrity to the brand, which is the most important aspect, right? If you can't sell the brand,
God forbid we had any fun doing our job.
Yeah, exactly. So they were feeding him Dave's and John and trying to steal the magazine, and then they're telling
Ginsburg. You got him, Ginsburg.
Telling his kids. Oh yeah, well so we had a meeting. I think it might have been like Christmas meeting or something like that, right before the Christmas party.
Right.
And we had the radio show, and the guy who they hired to sell the online digital presence was this guy Adam Ginsburg, who was a haunted house fanatic. All he wanted to do was build haunted houses. So all day long, instead of selling advertising, he would just be on the internet, like looking at things he can buy to build his haunted house. I know it sounds ridiculous, but there's a group of people out there that's all they do is they're obsessed with haunted houses. He was one of them.
They make them for Halloween, and people go.
So John and I said, we were so frustrated with him. He's like, it's impossible. Steve's like, how come we don't have any advertising for the No Bull radio show? And Adam's like, no one's going to pay for that. There's no value to it. I can't. It's impossible to sell. So we're like, why don't you let us sell it, Steve? Give us a chance to sell it, and if we sell it, then great. If we don't, then Adam was right. So John and I, he said, all right, fine. You got 2 weeks. So John and I go out there in 2 weeks. We bring in $8,000 a month. $8,000 a month. And then, so we're at this Christmas party telling them about the $8,000 we got coming in now for the radio show. And Adam's like, all right, I'll take it from here, because he wanted to get the commission on it, even though he didn't do any of the selling. John, you're not getting any fucking commission on this. He's like, you didn't do anything.
We deserve the commission.
What did you say about his inability to sell? I can't remember what you said. You said something to him about he couldn't sell his way out of a paper bag or something like that. Something very, very demeaning you said to him. And he wanted to go at John. I thought there was going to be a physical altercation, which would have ended very poorly for Adam Ginsburg. I can assure you that he was not a fighter, and we had to break him up and separate him. And so he hated us after that because we made him look bad.
Well, and then he was also on a campaign in Steve's ear. So he was whispering in Jenny's ear that Dave and John are going to steal the company.
Daughter. Yeah,
right. Your inheritance is in peril. That's one side. And then he was working on Steve. Everywhere I look, it's species. He's got everywhere species. Yeah. Species is everywhere.
And Steve already had a bad taste because I didn't want him to come on as a partner.
Right.
So he had all these people in his ears, because they were jealous, and because, Adam was pissed off that John said, go worry about your haunted houses. You don't know how to sell anything. You can't. And so,
and the letter, I wrote him that letter. Remember?
Yeah. I forgot about the letter.
That was a letter.
So hold on. So the Christmas comes and we get he's telling us how he had the best year ever.
Right.
He made all this money. And usually on Christmas, he gave Christmas bonuses out. And a lot of the people in the office really needed them because they used that money to, buy, stuff for their kids and stuff like that. I mean, that's how they survived. I mean, John and I didn't depend on that, but it was a nice little, feather, at the end of the year. And
it was, and in years past, it was a substantial.
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
It was a fat bonus.
So we're at this. This is the final Christmas party before we're fired, like a couple months later. So we go to the Christmas party, and he tells us how great a year we had, and that sorry, but we're not going to get any Christmas bonuses.
Well, because this was 2008, 2009. This is
2008, Christmas of 2008.
The housing bubble had started to burst, and the economy was headed south. And he was afraid he was going to lose money, so he didn't want to give anybody a bonus, which is exactly the time you should give him a bonus.
Right.
Then, to make matters worse, he was always, you'll remember this, do more, get more. Remember, do more, get more.
Yeah.
So in my case, not only did you go above and beyond the call of duty to, build the website, the presence, the forums, moderate them, all the shit you did on top of the other coverage and everything that you did. I was still manning the magazine as senior editor, cranking out, 15,000 words a month in content and managing all of that. And helping you build our, I spent a ton of time on the forums. I traveled to all the places we went to, participated. All that was for the website. And I'm thinking, do more, get more. I did 2 fucking jobs this year, and then I asked him point blank. He was driving me to the airport. He goes, "So are we getting bonuses this year?" It was right after the Christmas party. He goes, "No, I don't think so."
After he threw the Christmas party itself, probably cost him, $3,000-$4,000 of
in wine,
in food, and I mean he was very generous, with dinners and stuff like that. So I think a lot of the people would have rather have gotten a Christmas bonus. I didn't care, but a lot of people would rather had a Christmas bonus than had gone to the Christmas party. That was the reality. If you're going to throw a Christmas party and brag about how good the magazine's doing and the website, and then not give a Christmas bonus, it left a sour taste in everyone's mouth. So John and I you wrote this letter to him, right?
Well, because he came out with that, my top line projections didn't meet my bottom line, and numbers. Oh, he tried to sound like an economist to tell us why we weren't getting. Yeah, so that was kind of like another camel back snapping, because I worked my fucking ass off that year, man. I was fucking blown out working off, and it was a stressful year too. I couldn't refinance my house because it was the value was plummeting like a rock, and you
definitely needed the money that year, yeah, for sure.
Definitely, that would have been the time that exactly. So I had just had it with him because part of my job was covering for him, because everybody in the industry, he would never take anybody's phone call, ever, never. Yeah. So who do they contact? I'm seen as the second, I'm second on the masthead. I'm senior editor. They can't get to him. The next guy down the line is me. So why won't Steve return my phone call? Why won't Steve sign my check? I need my check. Photographers, videographers, writers, vendors, people he made promises to, he would never take the phone call unless in some way benefited him or got somebody, to do a photo shoot. But, and so I go, I'm covering for you. I'm like, you are the most loyal soldier. And then you just fucking stabbed us all in the back, and believe in Ginsburg over us, and the everything that he did to metastasize the tension, this divide, instead of being a diplomat and bringing us together, getting us all in the office, throwing the cat and the dog in the room and shutting the door. He didn't do any of that. He just panicked. His ego was completely bruised and battered by the treatment that he got online by the community. They sided with us. he had nowhere to go, so he had to get rid of us because we were
now,
more famous than he was.
Having said that, all that, even though, and this is, look, in companies, there's always internal friction. So that I never, ever for a minute in my mind thought that, number one, I wanted to leave, even though I was pushing really hard. And John knows this, for a TV show, because no one had TV shows. There was only the radio. I said, Steve, we got to build a TV studio. We got to build this TV studio because it's going to all be TV programming. No one's going to read magazines anymore. I knew this was coming. I predicted it, and I begged him, and he said, there's no business model. Even though that was the one thing that was, and then I think John and I even went to him and said, hey, we'll build our own studio, outside of Muscular Development, and you can just, buy the content from us if you don't want to do it yourself. So that was the only thing that we were really butting heads. But I was convinced I would have eventually convinced him to do it, which I think I would have. Because,
well, it would have been a natural progression from the radio show as the technology got better and the reach got stronger. We would have naturally. That's the thing, man. That's the thing. He would be presiding.
We were right. Hold on. So we were right there. So I never in my mind thought, all right, you know what, I'm leaving, or he's going to fire. It was the furthest thing from my mind, because number one, we weren't doing anything wrong other than just into friction. People thought it was all an act. They thought it was like Vince McMahon magic. No one took it seriously. Everyone thought all the fighting online on the forums was completely made up and fabricated just to get views. It was the first
didn't take it seriously
of all time, but it was serious though.
It was serious, but we didn't. There was no malice.
No, we didn't take it personally. I still loved Steve. I would have done anything for him. He called me a million times a day. No matter how much work I did, he always had something else for me to do, because in his mind, he had someone else is doing something that we should be doing. And I never said no. I did anything because I was a workaholic at that point. I didn't have kids. It was 100% dedication to Steve Blechman and the brand, because I really believed in what we were doing. And so I didn't see it coming at all, because matter of fact, I held a New Year's Eve party at my house and invited all the people in the office, Robbie Duran, who I forget who his secretary was at the time.
Amanda.
We even gave her a Christmas bonus of money, because we felt bad that she was like basically keeping Steve in check over there, and he didn't give her anything. So we even gave her, Don and I gave her an envelope of cash.
Yep.
I mean, and they were acting weird. Like Robbie was uncomfortable, but they came and we had fun, and we had Mr. G was dancing, and we had a good party in my house. So that's New Year's Eve. And then February, I guess it was, what was it, February 9th or something like that, whatever it was.
February, yeah.
First weekend in February, John and I go to log into the website, as we do every day, to put up content, and we're locked out.
Locked out.
So I had no idea, didn't see it coming. Blechman calls us, we're going in another direction. I'm like, Steve, you sure you want to do this? I said,
I got a meeting. I got to go.
Yeah. I said, okay. John and I talked to us. At first we were like, what should we do? And then we were like, we're doing this on our own. And so I don't think it took us maybe more than half a day to decide we're going to do this on our own. And
we decided on that phone call.
Yeah. And like a day or two later, we already had a rudimentary website. Yeah, it wasn't a website. I think it was like kind of like a Facebook-y
thing.
It
was a forum, a temporary forum.
Yeah, we had something up, and then we did our first radio show. I called Bob Lorimer, or it was Jim Lorimer at the time. He gave us press passes, carte blanche to the Arnold, which was later that month, and we covered our first show, and the rest is history. And then John came and built the first TV studio ever in the history of bodybuilding, probably.
Right.
And we started the Heavy Muscle TV show. So, it was not easy, let me tell you, because there was no camera switching. It was very complicated to do at first. It was all manual. 3 cameras. We had to put the footage together. It took forever to edit the stuff, and
we had to manage all those misfits in one room.
It was crazy. But you know what? Nuts. In the long run, it worked. But you know what? The sad part of the whole thing was that neither one of us really wanted to leave. I mean, it might have worked out better in the long run for the community and for the growth of what we were doing. But it all could have been his, and neither one of us probably would have left. We'd probably still be working there today.
He would own the Olympia right now.
Yeah. We would have talked him into buying the Olympia for sure.
Yep.
Because he always wanted to buy the Olympia. That was one of the things he always talked about. And when AMI owned it, they were like, we're never selling it, that kind of thing. As a matter of fact, he had a dinner with David Pecker, who was running at AMI, and it didn't last, it didn't go very well.
That's when Pecker offered to buy MD. He said, I'll buy you. Blechman had this loony idea that he was going to buy Flex.
For nothing, basically.
Try to convince him to sell it as a fire sale. And Pecker wasn't buying it. That was Pecker's Pecker's a mover and a shaker.
Much bigger player. And so he
Blechman
stormed out of the dinner with Blechman.
Right. So
left Blechman in the lease to take right. Did they take like a little doggy bag home for the
dog?
They
took the food. They took all the food.
Anyway, so John and I were at first, the first couple of years, we were very, very vitriolic towards the whole thing, and we would basically we took the Howard Stern approach to Blechman. We would just basically destroying them at every turn, we could possibly do, and it was a war, which actually elevated our game to like the highest possible level,
right?
And it motivated us to work really hard. What it did for Blechman was, because he didn't have the workforce over there like we had, he was just spending ridiculous amounts of money on all athletes. He hired everyone. He hired Dorian Yates, wasn't even competing, he wasn't even doing anything at the time.
Kevin Levrone, Flex, he was handing out $150,000 a year contracts, like invitations to a party,
just to say he had more than we did, and he still couldn't keep up because he didn't have the workers there doing this. And even when he would get the workers, he would fire them. David Bay was there for a while doing great work, and he got rid of him. And Sean Andros was there. He blew through a lot of people there because no one, what it was? No one can do what you and I did there.
Right.
And everyone fell short of that. And I think, and wouldn't take his crap because the way about me, I like to do things my way, believe me, but I have no problem taking instruction from people.
Right.
Like I'm not like, fuck you. I never would speak disrespectfully to him ever. He always was my boss, and I respected his opinions and whatever. And even if I would argue with him, eventually I would do whatever he tells me to do. Most of these other guys wouldn't do that, and so he just couldn't get along with them, and he couldn't get the work done. And I think he realized that no matter how many people he hired, it didn't matter. It just made things more complicated. When we had more of a skeleton crew, I think we got more done over there, actually.
And going back to the bonus thing, you got to also remember what rubbed salt in the wounds is that he had his whole family on the payroll.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's got his daughter, his son, who are not doing anything, especially the son, except showing up and going to lunch.
Yeah.
And he had everybody on the payroll, and then it was time to find Jenny a husband, a rich, successful husband. So they had to install her in a doorman building on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, so she could be in the mix, And she, they're trying to fix her up with cardiologists and lawyers,
She didn't want, obviously,
and she ends up with this unemployed guy from Long Island,
nice guy, but
wonderfully nice guy, and she's a wonderful. They're beautiful people, but their plan didn't work. So instead of getting someone else to absorb, the daughter, he had to support her. We're paying the rent. The company's paying the rent on her doorman building on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. We're paying their salaries. They're going on these vacations that are like $10,000.
His son who had to have an allowance too, right?
Well, he was on the payroll, and he was dealing weed on the side, so he got.
But it doesn't even matter if he has to pay his family. I don't care.
The point was he's shoveling all the money out there, and then all of a sudden we have no money to pay the workers' bonuses. The people who made the money you just gave to the kids. So
the irony was that the reason they gave that, one of the reasons why he fired us is that we were stealing money, which is even funnier because as employees there, I had no access to anything. I didn't have a credit card. I had no access to anything financial. Everything had to be submitted to them, all my receipts. So they could pay him or not pay him. You know what I mean? I booked everything myself. So aside from, even hotels, I had to put my own credit card down for incidentals and stuff like that. So we never touched a single credit card or anything like that. And so the amount of money that they spent after we left, I think totally made him realize how little we actually spent.
Oh, and then I got to yank about $1 million out of his pocket when I worked for VPX. I got to tell you, I owe Jack Owak. I owe him. He can call me up in the middle of the night and say, John, I need you to go and do. And I would go do it for him because of what he did for me.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
He allowed me to yank MD's advertising from.
That's right. What was it, like $1 million
advertising from MD.
It was like $1 million a year. Yeah.
It was $1 million a year, and and I got nope. Well, we're going another direction.
The whole thing. The reason we're telling this whole story and we spent the whole hour doing it, I think, is number one. MD was an institution. It warrants knowing the history of where it came from and where it went through. I'll give credit where credit's due, and I know John will too. Steve was a genius when it came to the magazine, when it came to the nutritional supplements he did back in the day with Twin Lab. Very good marketing. He understood magazines. He was really good, and he believed in people, and he empowered us. I mean, he wasn't like a tyrant or anything like that. He could be annoying on certain things, but that's it. Look, it was his company, So I had nothing but respect for him. I lost respect when he number one took the whole species nutrition thing as like a personal thing. And even that was going to move. We were going to move past, but then he allowed the people around him to poison him against John and I, who were his greatest allies. And I think I think John's relationship with Steve was so close that I think his children probably, had a little bit of jealousy over it, because like John was like the son like that Steve never had almost.
No, he would call me when this is what was particularly disturbing on my end, is that he would always call me his brother. He would say he's like my blood brother, it's like more so than his real brothers,
right?
And I when he was having that whole turmoil of events, when he was trying to leave Twin Lab and buy the magazine and get out from under that whole thing and cash out, and he was having a very hard time. I was totally in his corner. I flew to New York all the time to hang out with him and help him, and I stuck with him. I was his loyal soldier through all of that. And that didn't warrant enough, respect or reciprocation when the time came to say, if Adam Ginsburg is saying all these terrible things about you and about Dave and everything.
You should have pulled us in there and talked.
We should have pulled this. Call us in. And then he made up so much bullshit to justify, his actions, and nobody bought. No. And the really sad part about this whole thing is not only the destruction of the close. I mean, he used to stay at his house. Right. That is stayed at his stair. I went to his daughter's bat mitzvah, his son's bar mitzvah. I mean, I was at the wedding. I was at everything. So it was just a loss to me in a familial sense, that they were, I had a great relationship with Elise, his wife, that, even both kids to some degree. So it was a big loss on that respect, that he didn't see enough value in that to at least have had the decency to call us in, both of us, and discuss what's going on here, guys.
He didn't realize the impact that we had on the community, that we were carrying this new era of muscular development on our backs, and that when we left, a lot of people just followed us out of there, and so
all of them. Yeah. He totally underestimated. He totally underestimated what we had built. Totally underestimated, because he didn't understand it.
It was a bad move, and maybe it was the right move for us, but everything happens for a reason, I guess. But it's just sad. Really, we knew this was so. Once all that happened, John and I said, "Look, their days are numbered over there, because he's overspending." And I know what this industry, what you have to make to turn a profit. I mean, I've been around it long enough now with him, and then with RXMuscle, and I saw as things changed and the supplement companies weren't making as much money, and they were spending more money online, on because now all of a sudden there were Google, stuff that you can spend money on, and YouTube. And I said he's never going to survive because his overhead to run that operation was way too high.
Way too high.
And he owed, up until he still owes a lot of people a lot of money. I know Ron Harris was owed over $100,000 at one point.
Wow.
David Bay was owed money, still owed money for all his expenses.
Dan
Ray was owed money.
Yep.
And I'm sure if he's closing the doors now, probably a lot of other people, including the printer, I'm sure is owed a lot of money. That's
that's the sad part about it, is that Muscular Development is the oldest, longest running bodybuilding title in our history.
And now it's out.
And now it's, instead of being bought and ending his reign with the company having some intrinsic value.
Yeah.
It's just probably just riddled with debt. It's not being, the news reports are not, like I said in the beginning of the show, it's not, XYZ company is buying Muscular Development. The news is that Muscular Development is closing its doors.
Yeah. It's sad. It's a sad day. We built that, and we were part of that whole institution, and to see it go out like that is just kind of sad in a sense. And maybe one of these days Steve will be able to be distanced enough from the whole thing to maybe come on one of our shows and let us do an interview with him and talk about his whole history with the industry, because he's got a very interesting story about where he came from, and how they built Twin Lab and Muscular Development. We kind of told you our version of it, but his version is a little longer, and it's more involved.
Well, because you got to go down into the history with his father.
Yes.
He was such a great guy. God, what an incredible man that was.
I didn't know his dad. Yeah, I never.
Oh man, he was like so different than his sons. I mean, he was a man's man. He was a burly, big, rough. He instilled fear in you, man. He was a cool dude, and smart, and like very respectful. I mean, to everybody, he was a really, really good guy.
Right.
And it was really a tremendous blow to the whole family when he passed away.
I'm sure. I mean, the only good redeeming quality is they all made a lot of money, so that it's not like the company's bankrupt, but Steve is very well off for the rest of his life.
Look at what his ego cost him. He fed with his own money. He had to have, because Muscular Development cannot possibly make enough money to from what we know about circulation and advertising to possibly sustain itself without significant contributions from his pocket.
Unless he was just owing everyone money, and that's why he had to go out. I don't see any other reason why you close the doors unless you owe a lot of debt.
Well, I mean, you only close the doors when the company's worthless. You don't close the doors on a thriving business. You sell it.
Well, I mean, you saw the coverage. Their videos at the Olympia were pathetic. The views.
32 people watched them, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there were like a couple hundred, maybe a couple thousand views. I mean, we were getting like 100,000 views, on certain videos. So it just, I think they lost, the luster was lost over there, and no one really was going there, because it was, look, we always said when John and I first started Muscular Development, and then when we started RXMuscle, I said, let's build a clubhouse where everyone wants to hang out. It's like the bar Cheers.
Right.
You want to go where everyone knows your name. It's a fun place to be. You know all the people, all the players. That's why do you think our After Hours with the Whack Pack show is like the #1 show in RXMuscle? It shouldn't be, because there's no information imparted on that show. There's no knowledge given there. There's no
bodybuilding. It's anti-knowledge. It's anti-knowledge. You're dumber when the show is over. You've lost.
You have. Most people have a headache. I have a headache at least at the end of every show. But it's a hangout, and everyone goes there because it's like we get to hang out with these guys every week. And we've been doing this for the last 15 years, since the Muscular Development days. And guess what? They're still there. We love it. Valentino, Romano, Palumbo, Mr. G, all the crazy, and all the new people. We have Armand and Amin and Larry. I mean, there's always new whack packers joining the club. Big Lenny and all the other lunatics in our industry that make you feel good about yourself. You know what? Yeah, we all work out. We get it all. But at the end of the day, we're all people, and we have problems. And, when you see everyone else's problems, you kind of forget about your problems a little bit. And that's what Muscular Development was back when we originally started it. The forums were a place to hang out. And the radio show was a show that everyone watched and listened to every week because they got to hear John and I talk and bring up all the gossip from the week and where we were and what show we were at. And it just makes you feel like, I got a place to go where I know everyone, you know? And that's what I always wanted to make the website about. And that's what RXMuscle has been for all these years. It's just a place that you can go and hang out. And I love the when we started up the after hour show again, I said, this is so necessary. We've been too long without it. I think we took a year or two off of that.
Yeah, we did. I got to say though, that first couple of years that when we started this whole thing, and I moved to New York, we
throw caution to the wind. Yeah.
Just, whatever. We got to get this done. But there were so many great memories from that struggle,
Oh yeah.
Remember, one of my all-time favorites is driving back from like a show in Atlantic City, 3 o'clock in the morning. We're Sean was driving your Mercedes,
San Andreas,
120 miles an hour up the Jersey Turnpike, and Jeff, the producer, me. One other guy, I forgot who was Nick, the stick, was in the back.
We had nicknames for everyone too. Yeah.
We're all on laptops. You're on a laptop in the front. I bought that converter that plugged into that overheat. Got like 900 degrees with the fan blowing out. And we're all online. We're uploading photos while we're driving in the.
We recorded a radio show in the car. Yeah.
Right. Yep. While we're driving on the Jersey Turnpike.
Crazy.
So I mean, we had all those trips we took and hanging out with Triple H and just all those radio shows we did in your spare bedroom. With guys, some aren't here with us anymore.
Well, the original after hour show was literally in my computer room of my first house. Oh, no, it was my second house.
No,
but it was the size of like a big closet, basically.
Right. I was living in your first house.
Yeah, that's right. We jammed like 10 people into this room. With the acoustics were horrendous in there. We had microphones. We had 14 computers trying to record everything, and it was and there was no audio. There was no video at first, so all you heard was people screaming. I'm like, and at the end of every single show we recorded, that was the original after hour show. I said to myself, no one's going to listen to this. This was horrendous. Everyone was screaming over each other. Mr. G was coming in with intros and music playing. And I'm like, no one's going to know what the fuck's going on because you can't see any of this stuff. And it didn't matter. People listened to the shows and they loved it.
George, you would show up in
I said, George, there's no video.
Costume.
Yeah.
With no cameras.
Well, we would take pictures just so that people would know what we were doing.
God. And Jimmy the Bull, when are we going live? Because
John was building the studio at this point.
And he made you pay him, remember? He wouldn't come on unless you paid him.
You're right. I did pay him. So finally, when John finishes the studio, we were going live, even though we really weren't going live. We were going to go on video camera. Then I had to come up with themes of shows every single week, that we would record. It was It was the people that came. We had the craziest people who would come into that studio. Oh my God. And we would film it like 11 o'clock at night. You remember?
We had porn stars. We had those, those Rescue Inc. motorcycle gang guys. We had Gandhi. We had, the motorcycle guys wouldn't come on the show because Georgie was dressed up as Gandhi sitting on the desk. And
because George was dressed as Moses.
Moses.
Jimmy was Gandhi.
Jimmy was Gandhi, right? Yeah, that didn't go over well.
Well, that was before the wokeism came about.
Right.
It was really bad, but yeah, I mean, we did funny stuff,
the chicken in the warehouse, the eating contest.
Someone brought in these chickens that their parents bred. I think it was Jen, right? Mike Plaza's ex-wife. Jen brought him in, and they were letting the chickens go. Mr. G was chasing the chicken around my warehouse like Rocky. We do the craziest things. I mean, because I wanted to do entertaining, unique stuff. Because it's important to cover bodybuilding shows and give real information, but it's also important to have fun. And if people see you having fun, and you know what? This was the prelude to really what we were doing was pre-Instagram, TikTok. Now, if you go on Instagram, TikTok, people are doing the same things that we were doing, except now they're getting, a million views on this thing because they're putting it on their Instagram or their TikTok. there were entire channels devoted to all the kooky stuff we did. You know,
we would have exploded if we had TikTok.
Yeah, we were way ahead of our time, John.
We were tailor-made for TikTok, and we didn't even realize it.
We were very ahead of. But you see, these were things that like Blechman really was. He didn't want to do all this stuff, you know, and so.
Well, to be fair, it was because he had a phobia against technology.
Right. So what I'm saying is, it was actually, he did us a favor by letting us go, even though it was bad blood. But he really did, because it freed us up to do whatever we, you know, to do the stuff that we wanted to do, in a sense. So
I know he regrets it. I know he sees what we did, and knows that would have all been his, and he would have been the Joe Weider he wanted to be. And it's just obvious. There's no two sides to it.
I think he regrets the fact that he lost the relationship he had with you and I, which was,
I think so. I hope
for both of us was different, because for you it was like you said, like a brother type of thing, hang out, and like for me it was like it was a professional thing where we can talk shop. He loved talking about, who else is he going to talk about nutrition studies with? And,
he would love.
I love that stuff, and he always had the newest stuff, and he would always fill me in, and I mean, these are just, we could spend, we never even got any work done, because we would talk about all the studies and everything like that, which is really what he really liked to talk about. So he had like a good relationship with us that he kind of lost in the whole process. And I think he lost track of it wasn't as fun for him anymore, I think, because we made him look cool. When he lost us, he lost his cool factor. Yeah,
but
he also, I think he enjoyed, you know, sharing what he was doing with someone that he knew cared about it. I don't think anyone else cared. After that, whoever he hired was kind of just there to do a job, you know. And
every time I was there, he'd be like walking around, you know, dropping copies of studies off on my desk. You know, by lunchtime, I have 19 studies to read, and I'm like, when am I going to do this?
John, look, I didn't go into the office all the time, because it was like an hour and 20 minutes drive from my house each way. But I would go, he would make me come in like once or twice a week. And I would go in there, and I would be there all day with him, you know, with the studies. And then I have to wait for him to leave, because if he didn't leave, that's when I got all my work done. So him and he'd be like, he invited me to dinner every single night with him and Elise. Like, you want to come? No, you do. So I would stay there, and I would work from like, if he left at 6:30, I would work from like 6:30 to 8:30 at night, knock out everything that I had left. Then I would get in my car and I would drive back. And on the way back, I would stop at Bev's gym, because Steve's gym was, it was kind of on the way back to my house. I would work out there from 10 to like 11:30. Rick Collins was there, and all the night crew was there. And then I would drive home, and I get home at midnight, you know. And so it was a long day, but it was fun. It was like, I was like, this is pretty fun, you know. And if I lived closer, I definitely would have been there every single day.
No, I used to love when I went up there. Every morning we'd go to 7-Eleven, and he'd buy.
I didn't get up that early, John. Sorry.
We'd get up at like 5 in the morning, and he would go to 7-Eleven in the Hummer, and he'd buy every newspaper. The New York Times, the LA
he wanted
Times,
to be up on the latest and greatest of everything,
And he would buy me my own separate New York Post, because I was the New York Post guy. But you couldn't spend a penny of your own money when you were with him.
He was very generous.
So fast. Yeah. I mean, he was very generous, very generous. He took, you know, really good care of us, you know, until he didn't.
Yeah.
So.
Until you're no longer the flavor of the month. That's
right.
He just noticed, I think he felt like in business, like he kept his personal money and business money separate. And so, you know, he just felt like if the company had to print a magazine and he didn't have the money for it, then the printer didn't get paid. That's all. Not going to take it out of his personal account, you know?
Right. But he violated one of the first rules of business in his decision-making, is that in business, you do business with your head. Not your heart, your feelings, etc. Yeah. His feelings were hurt, and his hurt feelings motivated his actions, not the facts. If he had you know, cooled off for a couple days, called us into a meeting, you know, let's hash this out, you know, factually. Like I keep saying all the time, he'd be the heavyweight champion of the world of bodybuilding.
It could have been neutralized. Yeah, even after he fired us, he could have said, you know what? I thought about it. Just come back in. Let's talk this over. You and I would have gone in there. It would have been hashed out, and it would have been over. But
and it would have showed us how hurt he must have been, that he would take such a radical
right. And I'm sure you and I would have apologized if we really did hurt him that much or whatever. Or I would have loved to know what he thought he knew about us that was not really true, because someone was lying to him about something.
Adam Ginsburg was lying.
It had to be more than Adam.
I'm sure it was Jenny too, because Ginsburg was feeding her, remember? Yes. So he had her riled up. She's going crying to him that we're going to, fuck her out of her inheritance. And so she's upset, then he's back channeling, Blechman himself that, species is everywhere. These guys are conspiring against you. So because his last name was Jewish, he believed him and not us because our last names are Italian. And, we out of the, his way of looking at things, it would only be the Italians that would be
we mafia'd him up. We were mafing him up. Right. The funny thing about the whole thing was that they fired us because they were afraid we were going to take the company, when in fact by firing us they made us their competition, which is exactly what they didn't want. They had us on the team. There was nothing to take. We didn't own anything. There was no ownership whatsoever. The best thing they could have done is had us as indentured, workers for the rest of our life, that we could never defeat them.
That's why that tombstone was so poignant, because it showed us that this is what the people think, and ultimately, that ultimately panned out to be the truth. It was a long, agonizing, excruciating, difficult to watch death, but at the end, that's it. That's when it happened. We were very, as my friend Charlie said, very prophetic at the end of the day. Oh my God. You know what? It's a sad day in the industry. And like I said, I do want to extend out to Steve if he ever, decides at some point that, he's over this whole bunch of BS. Because at the end of the day, it's all BS. This is industry bullshit, I always call it. Right. There's no reality to real life here. This is just industry bullshit. Right. If he ever gets past it and he wants to come on the TV show and have John and I talk to him about the history of of what he's been involved in and kind of hash it out, and maybe we could all make up and say we love each other again, or maybe not. I don't know. It's up to him. I harbor no ill feelings for him, and I know you don't either. Dave, I'm very grateful to him. Yeah. My genesis in this industry was at his hands, so I'm very grateful for him. I'm glad we're still all alive too. Yeah. So. For sure. He would, if he could, I don't know. I just think his ego is too huge. I don't think he'd come on the show. But he's 70 years old now, or just about 70. I mean, come on, that's like enough already. I know. He should have his own TV show with me, like supplement review or something like that. Yeah, there you go. Put a show together with him. He would love that, because he could give me the latest study, and I'll be like, all right, Steve, let's talk about this and he could be. He would love. Are you kidding? He get a forum where people would actually. We can get him a pipe. And we can get him like a we could have him like be the professor, the nutty professor, like type of setup. You know what? We created his character, right? Oh, yeah, I know. He is thought of the way he's thought of in the industry by thousands of people because of us. We created that character. Oh, initially, but unfortunately, it degenerated to the guy who owes everyone money. That's the only problem. I prefer to say metastasized. Yeah, but but nevertheless, all of his baggage aside, I think he should swallow it and come on here with us. And, let's talk about. I'd love to do a show with him. I'd love to do a show with him. I would love it too. Even if I did a show once a month with him, a supplement review show. Do you know what a nightmare? He's still going through all the studies every day. I don't care. Of course he is. He's up on everything. He might as well have a place to actually talk about them, right? You would think he would like that. I mean, and we even with the National Journal of Proctology, we'll take all of it. Whatever you want to talk about, Steve. And because that character. Name 5 people in the industry that absorb information like he does, categorize it, catalog it, and is able to recall it when necessary. Right. You know, I mean, he's gifted.
He doesn't have to market anything. Just be an information provider. So people say, wow, this guy's smart. He actually knows what he's talking about, which he does. And that should be enough for him at this point. He doesn't need any money, right? I mean, he's got enough money to last him 10 lifetimes.
His great-grandchildren won't be able to spend it. He should assume the role of the professor. That's what we'll call him, the professor, and come on the show with you, and you guys be the professors, you know, and
then geek out and guru talk, you know, with him.
Yeah, guru talk, right? Yeah. And you have me on every now and then to talk about.
Yeah, we have you on the initial show just to hash out everything so we can make up. And
you guys can take over.
Make the piece, and then he can do his show. And maybe he can come on after hours as a special guest once in a while.
There you go.
Or Rips and Rants. He can come on
Rips and Rants. Come on with us, just you and me. Yeah. All right. So I think the industry is going to be pretty surprised about our reaction to this, but
we had to tell the history of it first because I wanted to put it out there so everyone knows, if anyone even cares. And I think it's important. I think the history of our industry is very important, and I think Steve was a major contributor to it at one point. So whether he's not relevant now or not, that's neither here or there. But he was very relevant at one point, and that's where this whole way we do contest coverage and we do reporting and we do podcasts, it all came from that era. We created that, not just me and you, Steve too. He was a major player.
Here he comes back.
My camera there for a second.
How come when you come back it's this different angle?
Because I use a different camera. I have two cameras. So anyway, Steve, we extend the olive branch. If you want to come on, I'd love to have you on, interview you. If you would love to do a show on supplements, I'd love to have you as well, because I know you still probably, even though you've closed up shop over there, I know you probably still love the whole industry and everything about it. So it's up to you. Ball's in your court. We're out of time for now. I'm Dave Palumbo with John Romano for another episode of Rips and Rants. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend.